circle. Everybody, 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 everybody into the circle, circle.
Claire and everybody, beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. That's our aspiration as Unitarian Universalists. Everybody in. Our Universalist ancestors believed and taught that everyone was going to go to heaven in the end. Everyone. No one left behind. Because they declared God is pure love, so what else could it be? Our Unitarian tradition has aspired to varying degrees of success to keep widening the circle of who's included in our circle of care and understanding and mutual support, including those of us who challenge the status quo and those who do not believe in God and those who are not even comfortable with the whole idea of religion. Everybody in. Today, we're celebrating the nature and the purpose of creating value-centered community together in this day and age in the spirit of Unitarian Universalism. We'll take time to say hello to each other in a little bit, but right now, I'll note that I'm the Reverend Kevin Tarsa, called by a vote of the members of this congregation 8+ years ago now to serve as this community's minister. And no one else can do that. The congregation has to vote. That's how it happens. And right now, I'll invite us to silence our cell phones, those ever-present cell phones for many of us, so that we can be present to our time together. And I'll invite us each to take 3 deep breaths. It may be helpful to take a 2-part breath on the way in. First, and then a little bit more. And then long and slow on the way out through your mouth, if that can work for you. So in through the nose in 2 parts. Oh, I can feel it already. And one more. In. And out. With that, everybody in, everybody in, everybody into the circle, circle. Everybody, 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 everybody into the circle, circle. And in that spirit, and in the spirit today of Kids Connection, with a special Kids Connection open house after the service, we begin, as they do upstairs, by creating the altar. So as in Kids Connection today, I'm looking for 3 volunteers, especially those who might be new to such things, to dig through this beautiful chest of possibilities that Gail Johnson Vaughn put together, and to choose out of there things to create this altar. There are cloths, there are objects of various kinds. I'm looking for 3 volunteers to work together to create the altar. Oh, I see one. Looking for other volunteers of any age. Joanne, one more volunteer. Yeah, come on up, come on up. And one more, oh, I'm gonna look for one more adult. We're gonna come up here. Here's Gail, who's gonna be your guide. One more adult I'm gonna invite to the mix. One more adult to join the mix. Who's willing to come? Great, all right. So in a moment, they're gonna start doing that. I'm also going to look for 5 volunteers to read a piece of the land acknowledgement. 5 people willing to read a little piece. And I'm coming to you, Beryl. 2 of you could spread that onto the table. Number 5. Next call for volunteers. 2 people to come and play these where you cannot hit a wrong note. Cats for one? 100%. Great. And the rest of us, we're going to sing while all this is happening, while the altar gets prepared. You're going to play all during this song. Go ahead and start, Toby. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. This half. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in the struggle and the power, gathered here in the struggle and the power, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw Beautifully played, beautifully created. And now our land acknowledgement, folks. I invite you to come on up, right all at once and right in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To each say your piece of the land acknowledgement.
With the symbol of these black oak acorns, we remind ourselves that we meet here on Nisenan land that was never ceded, never given up.
That the Nisenan people are still here among us today, resilient beyond genocide and generations of erasure and exclusion from California's history.
That the history of this land and its peoples continues to shape this community, including us.
That we support the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe in efforts to stabilize their people and to restore tribal sovereignty through federal recognition.
And that our own deepest well-being is bound to the tribe's well-being.
Thank you. And who would like to place the acorns on the altar somewhere? Joaquin? You were part of creating the altar. And anywhere you think is right. Probably not too close to the fire, but anywhere else. The whole basket can go on, just like that, Joaquin. Individual acorns and the whole basket. Thank you. Perfect. Perfect. One final invitation for volunteers for this moment. Just to get ready, I'll be looking for a few more readers, but we're going to light the chalice the way that young people do at Kids Connection. And this has some motions, which I'd like to show you first. It begins with a lighting of the chalice. We light this chalice because we are, and we make two U's, Unitarian Universalists. We are the church of the open mind. We are the church of the open mind. We are the church of the loving heart, just like you might expect. We are the church of the helping hands. And this last move was created by one of our young people. And together we care for our earth and bring peace and justice into the world. There's our peace dove, as the way I see it. So I invite us to do that together. Here are the words for those who will benefit from them. I think, Cyprus, we're looking for the words there. Yeah. Together, we light this chalice because we are Unitarian Universalists. We are the church of the open mind. We are the church of the loving heart. We are the church of the helping hands. And together we care for our earth and bring peace and justice into the world. Perfect. So now we need someone to light the chalice, which means taking a match to the flame and then gently holding it next to the light in our chalice here. Oh, here comes Janet. Do you want to help Janet? Oh, there's some matches out there. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks to everyone who's been making the first part of the service what it is by creating it together. And for those of us who are not young folks, we have to stay here. But the young people get to go to, we get to go to Kids Connection, and we send the light from this chalice on the way with them as we sing together. So who's going to be carrying the light today? Here comes Lindsay, all right, to get the light. And we sing. And our young people get to go on upstairs to Kids Connection. Aha. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, So now that you've been doing this together for several minutes, normally we'd have the worship associate welcome you to the morning. I'm going to invite all of you to be the welcomers today, especially those of you who are members and friends for a long time. I invite everyone to welcome the people around you and to make sure that everyone is welcomed warmly and well. I love that energy always. So one final invitation before we settle down for a little bit, to have lots of participation. So I'm looking for 7 readers to read a sentence or so, or a phrase or two from our opening reading. So 7 more volunteers who kind of wanted to last time. So I invite you to come on up. Maybe right in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. With this, we offer our opening words. These are words meant to invite us a little deeper into the time together. They always kind of set the tone or point us in a direction. Thanks for your willingness to offer them, each of you.
We gather together to draw a wider circle. I'll say that one more time. I said it wrong. We gather to draw a wider circle by Reverend Gretchen Haley. In a world that feeds on moral outrage, we are here to cultivate moral courage.
In a time that prizes picking sides, we gather to draw a wider circle.
And in a culture that teaches us to get for what we give and to ask, what's in it for me, we come to practice generosity and to remember we are all in this together.
In the midst of life's bitterness, we choose to sing, to give thanks, to laugh together, and to be keepers of beauty.
To offer a place of belonging for all who come in gladness and in pain.
To resist the push to the next moment and the next, to slow down, to breathe more deeply, to feel a part of something greater for this hour and in this space.
Let us be the change we wish to see. Come, let us worship together.
Beautifully delivered. Thank you. I invite you to let your shoulders just relax, let your body find its comfortable space. And if you're willing, just to show me on our kind of often used thumb scale, just where are you today? How are you feeling? Where is your spirit and how are you feeling today? Helps me to get a sense of where people are. Yep, the range. Thank you. Thank you. Come, let us be the change we wish to see. Last Sunday focused on the freedom of thought and the freedom of religious belief that are so central to the Unitarian Universalist religious tradition that we have inherited. I drew on Rebecca Parker and John Buren's framing of this tradition and UU communities like this one as a house for hope. So that's what we're building always together, a house for hope. And we focus on those personal freedoms we commit to and institutionalize and frame them as part of the sheltering walls of this house of hope, house for hope that we build together. And I shared a piece of the history we inherited from the liberal left wing of the Protestant Reformation, symbolized in plain glass windows, which were meant to let in light, light in essence to read by. The focus on each person's freedom to take in information and wisdom and experience and to interpret those for oneself, but not by oneself. To do it for oneself, but not by oneself. And I also asked why you're here and what you come hoping to find when you walk through those doors and when you participate in this community. Which brings us to this morning and another fragment of our history. And why our history when so much has happened since and when so many things have changed and we've changed in so many ways as a tradition? Well, as William Faulkner once wrote, the past is never dead. It's not even past. This is readily apparent in the all too familiar ways that newcomers to the US, immigrants, have so often been portrayed as immoral or violent or evil or disease-ridden. Overwhelming they're portrayed as, right? Like the Haitians with temporary protected status in Springfield, Ohio, only the more recent targets of American fear and anxiety, and that becomes rage and intolerance. So here's a more positive example of our past not being past. It's rooted in a small group of people in Dedham, Massachusetts in 1637, long time ago, who bequeathed us a way of gathering. In Kids Connection, the children actually, they choose the story they want to hear or read together at this point when they're together. Here's our story for today. And I'm drawing this morning heavily on Alice Blair Wesley's insight and wisdom and quoting her often. So by 1636, 30 Puritan families who had arrived on this continent at different times and on different ships and who were living in different towns came together when the General Court issued them a parcel of land, a township to be named Dedham, land that was the home of the Wampanoag, the Pocumtuck, and the Neponset peoples who had very complex layers of relationships with each other and with these new folks from elsewhere. Mostly farmers, the English immigrants got busy designing a town government, but then realized that they didn't know each other very well. They had been mostly all business, so they set up a series of weekly neighborhood meetings, quote, lovingly to discourse and consult together and prepare for spiritual communion in the church society, that we might be further acquainted with the spiritual tempers and gifts of one another. They met every Thursday in a specific rotation of different people's homes, and anyone was welcome to attend. And they had 3 rules. Before they left the meeting, they would decide on the next week's question, so people would have time to think about it in advance. 2, the host would answer that day's question first, and then everyone else could in turn either answer the question, raise a closely related question and answer it, or state their doubts or objections to what someone else had said. With this caveat, so long as it were humbly and with teachable heart, not with any mind of cavilling or contradicting. Cavilling, I had to look it up. It means to make a petty or unnecessary objection. And rule number 3, each person was to speak their own understandings or doubts. And Alice Blair Wesley writes that the records, which they kept quite elaborately, said that these gatherings, these reasonings, they called them, were very peaceable, loving, and tender, much to edification. In other words, much to moral and intellectual uplift. So I think we might benefit from air conditioning on. Would you be willing to lower the heat? I see people fanning and yeah, it was cool this morning, so we didn't put it on like normal. So this group of people in Dedham, Massachusetts met for an entire year And although they were people of the Bible, all their first conversations were about the just, peaceable, and comfortable proceeding in the civil society. They were figuring out how do we be a civil society together? In other words, they were asking, what are the conditions for creating a healthy, free society? And the early focus on the conditions of the larger society has carried all the way through to this day. The early free churches, as they were known, became the strongest advocates and voices for justice, for peace, and for reasonable laws. That was their starting place. Then after talking about what was needed for a good society in general, this small group of people meeting on Thursday nights in Dedham eventually turned their attention to establishing a church, which was kind of expected of them. And one of their first questions was, are we qualified to get together and have this conversation ourselves? We are, they decided, as long as we are acting out of genuinely deep religious love. We're the ones to have this conversation, they said. And what they meant by deep religious love was, in their time, also what they meant by union with Christ. Different than we might look at it today. But in all their writings, Alice Blair Wesley says, as she dug into them, she's convinced that what they meant was, in effect, not very different from what we would mean if we use the words deeply religious love more broadly today. Really that all-encompassing, expansive sense of what it means to live a loving life in the world. So then their follow-up question was, well, since meeting like this as neighbors has been great, do we even need a church? Isn't this enough? Isn't what we're already doing enough? And Wesley said that they decided that neighborly meetings, wonderful as they were a little too casual. That if they really wanted to live in the ways of deepest love, those really challenging ways of deepest love, they would need to form a much deeper community of love. Their conclusion, after all these conversations, was, says Leslie, that members of their new free church should be joined in a covenant, in other words, in a set of mutual promises, a covenant of religious loyalty to the spirit of love. Loyalty to the spirit of love. This is a set of promises that they wrote themselves together, that they each signed, and that through which they joined together of their own choosing as a community. Their loyalty, she points out, wasn't to a tradition, but to the spirit of love working in their own hearts and minds and to what love was asking of them. This is a shift from what things had been like in Europe, right, or in England. And though there were plenty of practical legalistic words in their documents, they also used words like sweet, comfort, help, brotherly. But by far, she says, the most commonly used words were affection, affections, affectionately, embrace and love, loving, lovingly. Might not be what first comes to mind when we picture the stereotypical pilgrim hats. Now, full disclosure, it's important to know that we would not be happy with many of the ways they did things at that time. And few of us would share their particular religious or social beliefs. We'd be appalled by some of them, in fact, I'm sure. But when all is said and done, Alice Blair Wesley says, the integrity of the free church, in other words, the tradition that we inherited, to this day comes down to our loyalty not to an organization, not to a creed or set of religious beliefs, not to a hierarchy of leaders. It comes down to shared loyalty and commitment to the spirit of love at work in the hearts and minds of the local members. Nowhere else, the local members. In other words, of you. The loyalty of you to the spirit of love as it works in your hearts and minds. When we think of the structures that, the walls, for example, that hold UU communities together, it's this combination of absolute personal religious freedom, right, that very open-ended freedom, and this self-chosen voluntary commitment to make the journey together with others in the ways of love as we understand them or as we come to understand them over time. That's the reason and the way to be together. Thinking and believing for ourselves, but not by ourselves. That's what they came up with in 1638. The Dedham people built their thatched roof church building during that same year that they signed their covenant. And they considered themselves an independent congregation, not affiliated with any specific tradition. The very first tax-supported free and public school in the United States was built 6 years later on the Dedham church grounds. And the town's first public library was in the minister's office. The larger civic responsibility, right? And then 10 or 11 years after the Dedham Church's founding, representatives from 24 of the 29 Massachusetts congregations and from 24 churches and other Puritan colonies, they met together in a synod and they drafted the Cambridge Platform in 1649, which basically picked up on all that spirit of that early Dedham congregation. They were wanting to ward off some encroaching Presbyterian forms of church governance that were starting to come their way. And they wanted to do this before any bigwigs came across the Atlantic who could rein them in. So they sat down, quick, we got to put this down. And they outlined their vision of congregations who were organized by the voice and the democratic participation of local members gathered in covenantal, in other words, self-chosen promises, relationship. This was the same thinking and energy, and you can feel it, that fed what became the American Revolution. Right? This was the same spirit that was alive that moved toward the American Revolution. As a result of those Dedham families and the Cambridge Platform, we Unitarian Universalists, their descendants, have a covenantal tradition rather than a creedal tradition. Meaning what holds us together is not any particular set of specific religious beliefs. We can believe many different kinds of religious beliefs. What holds us together is our promise to do this together in conversation with each other, listening, sharing, bringing our truths and our doubts to the conversation. This is a set of promises that local members create and sign on to themselves, rooted in loyalty to the spirit of love as we figure it out for now. And because of this, we also have what's known as congregational polity, meaning that our congregations are autonomous, not independent. We rely on other congregations for support, right, and connection, but autonomous and self-governing. This started way back then. This was a big shift in those traditions. And here's where the history is telling and important, not just what happened, but how it happened. Our tradition, the one we're trying to carry on and recreate always for the new day, it arose not from a set of academic theologians or priests or even local ministers who sat down in elaborate convocations to figure out how things should be organized for everybody else. It was local folks getting together to figure it out, drawing on their knowledge and their lived experiences in England, drawing on their hopes and their visions and their dreams for the world as it could be. They wanted to show people how the world could be by how they lived together, how community could be done. And they were aided in this by the spaciousness of moving to a new place, right? Away from the familiar and away from the powers that be, the institutional structures of power. It was local folks deciding how to proceed week by week, gathering by gathering, question by question in people's homes, with everyone invited to share, asking important questions, starting with what makes for a good and just and loving society, and therefore asking, well, how's a person supposed to live a loving life, therefore? These were answers that they knew would over time always be changing, always be unfolding, because we would be. Local folks not deciding a final answer, but that they and the world would be best served if they could embody, if they could be a community committed to journeying together wherever it led, through the emotional and spiritual and intellectual and political landscapes that they might need to find their way through. And goodness knows, there are all kinds of landscapes to traverse, right? The famous American architect Franklin Lloyd Wright, who was raised by Unitarians and who identified as a Universalist all his life, was once asked how he felt about organized religion. And he replied, "Why organize it?" It's not that our congregations are unorganized, it's that they are organized flexibly because they're each governed by local members. We are the beneficiaries and bearers of the great tradition of the free church, says Wesley. It is at once an exceedingly strong and precious and fragile inheritance. It's strong and precious and fragile. She sums it up like this: the free church is an organization we establish and join so that we may help each other to find over and over again, in 1,000 varying timeframes and settings, what are our own worthiest loves, and therefore what these loves now require of us if we would be loyal in the most meaningful sense, in what we do, in our actions, in the way we live. The basic enterprise of the free church, she continues, is too personally important ever to turn it over to any but faithful long-term partners in the business of living with religious integrity. In other words, people with whom we make these promises, the living out of our real and right loves. That's what we're supposed to be doing together on Sunday mornings, and in fact, in everything we do, every time we get together, every time we talk to each other, helping each other to find and live our worthiest loves. Not sappy or simplistic loves, but the demanding loves that envision the widest and deepest possible good for all, right? The widest circle of good for all, everybody in. As Gretchen Haley put it in our opening words, parallel to what so many of you said last week about what you're looking for when you come here. She said, "We are here to cultivate moral courage. We gather to draw a wider circle. We come to practice generosity and to remember we are all in this together. We gather to laugh together, to be keepers of beauty, to offer a place of belonging for all who come, in gladness and in pain. We gather to help each other resist the push to the next moment and the next. We gather to slow down, to breathe more deeply, to feel a part of something greater, to be the change we wish to see." This congregation has crafted 2 written covenants. A behavioral covenant, which is a set of aspirational promises about how members will behave with one another, really helpful. And this congregation's mission statement, a promise, really, for what members will pursue together. Both covenants were crafted by members of the congregation and voted on by members of the congregation. The aspirational mission of this community names the promise this way: with courageous love and a sense of wonder, we will cultivate our spiritual, emotional, and intellectual strengths in order to create a world that is more compassionate, more sustainable, more just. That's the promise made. The world is a big place, but more to the point, the world begins right here in our relating, in our words, in our behaviors. The courageous love and the compassion and the sustainability and the justness, they begin right here among us in how we are with each other, in the deep questions of the moment, in people's responses, in the deep listening, in the sharing, in the expression of our own doubts and our understandings. Humbly, remember, and with teachable heart, not with any mind of cavilling. Now, you might think that how a community organized is secondary to why it gathers, But it turns out that how we gather has everything to do with why we gather as UUs. Our ancestors framed the walls of this house for hope out of a commitment to personal freedom, a belief, and a covenantal promise to journey together deeply and well. Those are the ingredients for the walls, right? Those are the materials. It's ours now to attend to these sheltering walls in order to sustain a house of hope. And it is yours now, you members, who say yes to this venture, to discern together what best happens within these walls and through these walls, in light of your own deep searching, in light of the spirit of the worthiest loves you help each other to discover. This is the journey. Each thing we undertake this year, including what will become a looking ahead to say, where are we going? AKA strategic planning. This is part of that process. Helping each other discover our worthiest loves and then living into them. So may we be. So may you be. But oh, I've just done all the talking. A lot of it. Let's point the way forward with this. In the quiet of the ritual of joys and sorrows we're about to share, I invite you to surface in your heart and mind one of the deep questions you've been wrestling with or dancing with lately, and that you're wanting help to sort out. What's one of those deep life questions you're working with right now that you're looking for help to sort out? The kind of deep question that a group of people loyal to the spirit of love might actually help you with, by their listening maybe, by their sharing, by their insights, and by their own questions. What's one of the deep questions in your heart and mind right now? After this ritual of joys and sorrows, this taking of a stone and placing it in the bowl of water, or online typing it into the chat, some of what you carry, after that, I'll invite some sharing of some of those questions. I invite us to enter this time with intention, with heart, if it is your practice, with prayer, as we honor all the joys, the sorrows that we're carrying with us today through this very tangible ritual. As our meditation, if you're willing, I invite you to name a question that you're working with right now, the kind of question that warrants deep exploring, maybe with others. I'll watch the chat too. What's the question?
I am being asked to help my brother prepare for his death. And he is asking me questions that I don't know the answer for. And his biggest one right now is wondering if there's an afterlife and will he see his parents.
So I'm going to share. So I'm being asked to help my brother as he approaches his death. He's asking questions that I don't necessarily have the answer for. You're being asked to be part of that, including the big questions of what happens, right? Is there life after death, and will I see my parents? Big question.
How do I find the fine balance between supporting and being of service to my UU community
How do I
and myself?
How do I find the balance between being of support and service to my UU community and to myself? You won't be alone in that one. You won't be alone in that one. Yeah. Other questions that you're working with?
I have a question about my brother as well. And he's on a clear path toward homelessness, needs help, and will not accept it. What's my role?
A brother on a clear path to homelessness, needs help, won't accept it. What's my role?
My question is, how do I continue in the community with people that I've loved and known for a long time and have such different political beliefs than mine?
How do I be in community with people I have known and loved for a long time, but who have such different political beliefs than mine? How do I find compassion, tolerance, and bravery to engage with people whose views are so different from mine? I see lots of nods. Claire.
How do I graciously let go of some of the physical things that I do and bring in younger people, so graciously age?
How do I missed the first couple words. How do I
let go of some of the physical things I used to do?
How do I let go of some of the physical things I used to do?
And graciously age.
Oh, and how do I bring in younger people and graciously age, letting go of the physical things I used to do?
My question is for interacting with people who may share a lot of my political beliefs, and other or spiritual beliefs or whatever beliefs those that I hold dear, that may be similar to me, but have a different reaction in the world to folks who are different from them.
Yeah. How do I engage with people whose views are actually similar to mine, but who have a very different reaction to the world and what's going on? Yeah.
How do I stay connected to my values amid fear of abandonment?
How do I stay connected to my values amid fear of abandonment? How do I live this new phase of life worthy to myself and others? Mentoring when one's own life leaves lots to be questioned. I invite you, if you're willing, to turn to somebody near you and share something that's on your mind, if it is a question. It doesn't have to be the most risky question, but to turn to somebody near you and share one question that you've been working with these days. Ah. And so, oh, it's fun to see you. And so, I know it. That's the whole point. And so, all I have to say is, and so, the journey continues, right? And so the journey continues. I talked a lot today to set a stage really for the whole year's worth of interaction, right? I wanted to tell that story so it becomes a foundation for how we engage the whole year and this exploration of who we are and where we're going and why. So thanks for that. And here are the questions, right, that start to move. I invite you to pick up on them. Maybe it's even right after the service, but also as time moves forward. Thank you.
There's not a sign up there that says offering, but I'm here to offer an offering. Everybody in? Everybody in to this circle? Many of us have gathered here together many times over many, many years, and others have joined more recently. Some of you are here for the very first time. What a rich circle we're sharing together. We bring into this circle our humanity, our curiosity, our generosity. It is in this spirit that we invite you to participate in this ritual of offering, where we pass simple baskets for you to share to whatever degree you're willing and able, your simple gifts that keep our circle strong in the many ways that meet the needs of us that come here together, and also to support one of our local nonprofits that carries out our values beyond these walls. This month, 50% of our offerings will be shared with Nevada County Habitat for Humanity. They bring together people to build homes, their own homes, and homes for others who need them, to build communities and hope. Their vision, which I so relate to, is a community where everyone has a safe, decent, affordable place to live. Their work is amazing. Greeters, will you please pass the basket? Thank you for your humanity, for your curiosity, and your generosity of spirit, of time, and of all that you treasure. We dedicate these gifts to the work each of us does to keep the circle open in our own lives.
Thanks to everyone who leapt in to volunteer today. Beautiful reading, beautiful music, beautiful altar, beautiful sharings. This was a Sunday when our worship associates, who are often more active in the service, were all occupied. So in part, I thought, okay, we'll move to one of those services where the people participate, right? This is part of how we'll do it. And the very last minute, Gail said, I actually have some space. Is there anything that would be helpful? So thank you. So Gail helped develop this chest full of beautiful things for the altar and get set up yesterday. Thank you very much for that and introducing the offering. To Claire, thank you for singing bravely and leading us in song at the beginning. Well done, beautiful. Thanks to our greeters, Lori and Corey, and those people who greet on their own, even without official designation. To Kids Connection folks who are up there, Lindsay and Jenny today. George is our lay pastoral care associate who's here officially this morning. So thank you for being present. So the lay pastoral care associates are kind of at the ready if something arises or if something's needed. They're available on these Sunday mornings. Refreshments, I saw Lynn and Rain back there among other people. And Shanti, who came in and did the setting with beautiful flowers from Patricia. Thank you, really beautiful flowers. And Andy and Cypress, we gave extra work because we're in this position today. Thank you very much. And Eileen online as well. So the conversation will continue through the whole year. A few announcements for ways people are engaging in these conversations. There's a Let's Do Lunch potluck tomorrow. The Citizens Climate Lobby actually marches in the parade today, the Constitution Day parade, and meets tomorrow as well. Buildings and Ground Work Party will be next Saturday. There's an artist reception for Sandra's work on next Sunday after the service. And sign up for the Yuba River cleanup to help clean up the Yuba River with folks from the congregation. And remember, there's an open house for Kids Connection after the service, especially for those people who came with young kids to go see what happens up there exactly. And for those who have been writing out all those many thousands of postcards, it's time to start mailing the Georgia postcards today through September 30th, and feel free to pick up another packet should you so choose. As always, check out the website. So for those who have crossed the threshold for the first time today, thanks for entering new territory. It's no small thing today. We're glad you're here. I framed today's language a lot in terms of community. My hope is that you get to say, if I tried this on for size, what would it feel like? I mean, not this morning, but this whole idea of how and why we gather. We'll close with an invitation that's really a song we sing to each other about come and go with me. It comes from the African-American experience of being enslaved. I invite you to sing it as that invitation to each other to go to that place that you think is the place we ought to be going together, right? That world that you can envision as best possible. I invite us to rise in body or in spirit and to sing. Justice. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice. singing. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. In the spirit of those Dedham folks in funny hats who asked, are we qualified to have this conversation about forming and being a religious community? And who said, yes, we are, in a conversation that never ends, I invite us to share the community benediction that this congregation extends to each other every Sunday, this invitation into what's next. We remind each other to carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Please join us for Kids Connection, refreshments, and we'll see you next Sunday for an invitation to deep listening.